All right, next up, everyone, is Bioxytran Inc. They are an OTCQB company trading under the ticker symbol BIXT. The company is a clinical stage biotech with two revolutionary platform technologies. They have an oral glycovirology drug that recently completed clinical trials and achieved 100% viral reduction in 7 days, a feat only accomplished by one other drug in the past decade. Their drug is a galectin inhibitor that neutralizes the COVID-19 virus and prevents it from entering cells. They also have another platform drug being developed to treat strokes. Due to the molecule's small size, it has the ability to carry oxygen into areas of poor circulation. So today we'll be speaking with Mike Sheik. Nice to see you again. And I know when we interviewed you last month, Mike, you announced your peer-reviewed journal article and you seemed pretty convinced it was going to be a major value inflection point. So we're happy to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So over the past month, the stock seems to be trending higher, but no major value inflection point. So what sort of traction have you been getting from either the investment community or the medical community? I have a note here that you have prepared a small presentation on this topic. So I want to give you the floor and then you'll call me back and we've got lots to discuss with you today.
Well, thank you. So here, let's jump right into it. These medical journal articles that you see, they don't get very good view rates. No, there's not many people are looking at it. So on the slide here, notice the right, lower right, we have a typical journal article that's out there. And you'll see on the right-hand side, they have this scoring system. And there's really nothing there. So look, these are the typical scores that you might get. Here, renewal of cancer immunotherapy. That's pretty exciting stuff. It's got a score of 15. And, advanced glycation end products and psoriasis. Psoriasis, it's a skin disease. There's just not that much traction. So let's take a look at what happened with our peer-reviewed article, okay? And you'll see here's our peer review, an oral galectin inhibitor in COVID-19, a phase 3 randomized controlled trial, 547. And you'll see there's like a little arrow there. That's where the score is. We have like this little thing there. This is 5, and this is the attention score. But, let's read. Let's read over to the right there. I mean, do you guys see this? We're ranked 29 out of 3,500. We have news articles, blogs, tweets, Reddits. You can kind of see the scientific community basically comprehended these results. They understand what this means. They understand viral elimination of 100%. Now, the question that we want to look at here is on the right-hand side of this slide. You're going to see this was, look at when this was released. It was released in October, or not in October, I'm sorry, November. It was released in November, and it has the same headline as the journal. Nothing changed. People, the investors have known about this all this time, but the scientific community can't get behind anything. That was in preprint format. Now it's peer reviewed. You need a peer review. It's absolutely critical for these scientists to want to disseminate the news, and they can't do it and won't do it without the peer review. And that's done. That's behind us. So that's the good news. Now, let's take a look at what happened in terms of Twitter activity. We have this thing called impressions with marketing. And in Twitter, they call it follows, or potential followers, 1.7 million. So that is the audience that our journal article made it out to through just Twitter. This is why our score is so high. And then you can go and you can see all this on the journal article. So all these are basically screenshots or modified screenshots of simply going to our journal article, and you can see all this activity. So what we're trying to do here is show you, the investment community, the scientific community really likes what we're doing and is really spreading the message. So we're going to get into what the difference is, but look, we're in the 99th percentile of all journal articles. See that on the right? 99th percentile. That's our ranking over the past year. That's pretty amazing. And I want investors to really think about that. Next thing, we do have a very avid influencer out there, Chris Turnbull, very high page views, a lot of page views. If you look right below, right in the middle of that screen, and you see where the page views is, 317,000 page views when we took the screenshot. It's much higher, but I just wanted to show you this as an example. Now, we also had solid news distribution. And again, what you do is you just go onto the screen and you'll see we had 22 news outlets pick us up, and this was, that Zero Hedge article is pretty good for us too. But you can kind of see news stations all over the place talking about us. Now, let's look at the article traffic. So on the actual article itself, if you go down and you scroll down to the very end of the page, this is the chart that you're going to see. Now, that's a chart on the left. If that were a stock chart or volume chart, man, does that look good, right? Now, on the right it's not superimposed, but that shows you what our stock chart looks like. It had this blip of life, and then it's been relatively flat. So what you can conclude from this is that investor interest has not caught up to the scientific interest. The scientific interest is very, very high, and it's just a matter of time. So let's take a look about a case study. What happened is we're trying to compare ourselves and our journal articles to everyone out there. And hopefully what you saw is we're in the 99th percentile of people that are putting out journal articles. There's a significant amount of scientific interest in it. And eventually that's going to translate to investors, and here's why. As you can see here, Gilead was the last case study where you had a 100% rate, 100% response rate in a viral disease. Their disease was hepatitis C, and it was for Harvoni. And what happened on this chart here on the right that you'll see, the stock, when they announced their journal article, it had an $80 billion valuation, and it went over $160 billion in a year and a half later. So in the past decade, only once, in this case, have we had another 100% responders rate. So that's the company that we keep. And I think it's important to let investors know that. Now, the genie's out of the bottle on this. XBB is showing strong immune evasion to vaccines and Paxlovid, we've seen. We had 100% viral elimination by day 7 in standard risk patients. It's a chewable, easy to take tablet. And we have a peer review article that arguably is reaching this viral status. And what's happened, and this, I want everyone to pay attention to this, is collaborators are approaching us, and they want to utilize our platform technology. We're getting those calls. Just because you don't see it in the stock price doesn't mean nothing's happening. So scientists really understand the significance of what we have going on here. Now, in time, we think the masses are going to figure that out. So anyhow, this is what I really wanted to get out into the open with investors. So Anna, I'm ready for some more of your questions. We'll take it back
Great.
to you.
Thanks, Mike. Yes. Well, since your last call with us, you had some pretty big news announcement about BXT25. So the news was about your acellular oxygen carrier. And I think our investors would like to know what's so special about this new drug and why your animal studies were so encouraging.
Okay, BXT25 is an acellular oxygen carrier, and it's invisible to your immune system. And it only does one thing. It shuttles the oxygen that it picks up in your lungs to oxygen-starved tissue in your body. That's it. And it does it through an oxygen transport network in your body, and most of us call it veins or arteries. Now, to fully understand how our drug works, first we got to go over how blood typically transports oxygen. So you have this single blood cell. It's made out of 270 million hemoglobin molecules. And the heme of the hemoglobin is what the oxygen sticks to. A singular blood cell is kind of like a freight train loaded with millions of these mini oxygen-carrying drones, like they're inside rail cars. So when a blood cell has a high concentration of oxygen, sitting in its cargo, and it passes through this low pressure region in your body that doesn't have much oxygen, what happens? It sheds some of its oxygen cargo. That's how tissues in your body get oxygen. Now, many people don't realize it, but it's basically applying the laws of physics that actually delivers the oxygen to your cell. There's no cellular process that, just kind of meters out the oxygen here or there. It's all physics. You got areas of high pressure and you got areas of low pressure, and the high goes to the low. Physics. Now, let me relate this to BXT25. In order to make this drug, what do? We pulverize blood cells to the point where we get these very tiny heme clusters. Now, heme, for all intents and purposes, is iron. And we all know what happens if you have iron in your blood. It's called iron poisoning. It's a bad thing. This is why we need to stabilize these heme clusters with our copolymer to create this oxygen carrier that's 5,000 times smaller than a red blood cell. Now, this molecule, it doesn't contain any oxygen when we infuse it into you. And what it does is it picks it up in the lungs, distributes it over and over and over again. Now, I'm not sure many people realize this, but the blood in our body round trips through our lungs in less than a minute. So our molecule is theorized to do that round trip over and over 9 to 18 hours after infusion. Now, you're asking, hey, what makes it so special? Well, we're basically intravenous form of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. When you go to a hyperbaric chamber, what they're trying to do is they're trying to increase that oxygen concentration in your blood plasma to 20 or 30%. So to give you some sort of frame of reference, we're just breathing air right now, right? We have 2% in our blood plasma right now. So what we're doing, or hyperbaric oxygen does, is designed to oxidate your tissues better in regions where your blood flow is constrained. And let's talk about the theory behind hyperbaric treatment. When you get older, the small capillaries inside your body, they kind of look like the spider veins on, perhaps, for example, an older woman's legs, just to kind of give you a visual reference. Our molecule is able to flow smoothly with the blood plasma in those type of craggly capillaries. With BXT25, we believe more oxygen will be delivered to the organs than what a typical blood cell could do in the same situation. Because if it gets slowed down when it kind of bumps against the walls of these craggly capillaries, trying to make it through this narrow passageway. So let's get back to our mouse model. We hemorrhaged these mice, and why it was so important. We hemorrhaged these mice 20% after we injected them with BXT25. So let's relate this to the idea and concept of giving blood. An average adult has 10 pints of blood in the body. So we can donate a pint, no big deal, right? But when you get over 15% of your blood loss, that's when you start to have a problem because it affects your heartbeat and respiration. When you don't get enough oxygen, your body simply has to compensate. These mice were hemorrhaged out 20%, and they had no impact on the respiration or heartbeat. And that can mean only one thing. That means their organs got oxygen that they needed with our molecule. There were no side effects in these animals. They recovered. We fully expect this mouse model is going to translate into humans. We have to do a little more testing on larger animals, and then it should be ready for the clinic. Now, the big deal about this is we literally made history because this was the first time we used a carbohydrate to successfully carry oxygen in an animal. So we're pretty excited about that.
You should be, Mike. So with so much potential in the company and proof, why is the volume so low and the price of the stock so flat?
You know, here's the kind of situation. So our company has a little over 1,300 shareholders, and approximately 150 of them own 10,000 shares or more. That's not a lot of people. And that's not enough to provide the liquidity that we need. We're at the point where one shareholder could strongly influence the stock price up or down. Although, you know, looking at it, we think most of the bias is to the upside. But here's the situation. We have 3 shareholders with really large position of the float. And when I mean large, I mean 50% of it. Now, that could be a real positive if they're not selling. The thing is, these legacy shareholders, they have been leaking shares into market over the past 10 months. And most of that position has been gone. So I don't want to alert anyone. And we think existing shareholders were noticing this trend. So our long-term shareholders, they're basically been conditioned by the selling pattern. So there was this period of aggressive accumulation, you know, basically in the September timeframe that basically came to a halt. Now, right now, we're seeing lots of bid support out there. And those are these existing shareholders that really, truly understand what we have and what it's worth. And they're looking for a good deal. But the current price action and volume suggests that the seller has pretty much exited their position. But it kind of takes time to woo these long-term investors into taking offers again. So they're so used to, you know, being hit on the bid. So we got a taste of that and what it's like to be without a seller in our stock. And that happened on March 8th. And I encourage investors to go look back at that date. We had over 1 million shares traded. And what happened there is after we broke 300,000 of intraday volume, the stock went parabolically higher, went all the way to $1 before coming back down. Now, another thing I want us to all keep in mind is that we have been aggressively marketing our story only for the past month. We had 100% responders rate. You can't sell that message without a peer-reviewed journal report. And remember in my presentation, it was back in November of last year that we had the preprint. Because, you know, this number just sounds so unbelievable. We need the support of that. So what we are seeing at the moment is basically a contraction in volume. These existing shareholders that we have in there, they really have no desire to sell at these low levels, and they're waiting for this value inflection point before selling. We basically need new buyers familiar with our story, and then we could see this uptrend again. And they want to see that before they want to invest. So we have this stalemate, and the only way to break this stalemate is to find some more buyers. And one of the ways to do that is through more media appearances like Emerging Growth, like this.
Good. Glad you're here. Do you have any institutions looking at your company, Mike?
Yes. We are active discussions with a number of them. And truth is, they love our story. Now, the stock is tightly held. So when and if they come in, you're going to notice it. You're going to see it in the volume. Now, many investors might not realize it, but we were even fortunate to be even talking to these people, these institutions, because it's rare that they want to talk to it or invest in OTC companies. See, Bioxytran is ready for an uplisting to a major exchange, but these crossover funds that would do something like this, they're kind of on the sidelines. See, they've been paralyzed by these poor market conditions. And let's look at the big picture. There used to be around 4 billion of daily liquidity in OTC markets. It's dropped to under $1 billion right now. Look at that. This makes it very hard for funds to invest any real size because the liquidity just isn't there.
So when do you plan to manufacture or sell your drugs?
You know, our strategy to be a drug developer. That means licensing our technology. That means we need to develop novel products that big pharma is going to want to buy. We have honestly no intention of ever selling the drug and developing our own sales force. That's just not in the cards. That is precisely what big pharma is good at, and we're willing to partner with them. It would take enormous capital resources to build manufacturing and sales. Look, we're a small company. We got a half a dozen employees, a lot of outsourced help. We're developing 2 platform technologies with potential pipelines that could rival some of the big pharmas. We simply don't have the staff to sell our drugs, and we don't believe in fixed costs either. One of the ways that we've survived over the past couple of years is by not paying ourselves. Our payday comes by getting these drugs to market and approved and increasing our stock price. We're basically in a complete alignment with our long-term investors.
So talk about this drug curing other viruses. Is that possible?
Well, you know, our goal is to create a drug as strong as penicillin. And we know how powerful penicillin is. But for viruses, we developed a platform technology that looks like it's going to work with COVID, RSV, and influenza. We're basically going after these upper respiratory tract infections in the short run, but it's really so much more than that because it's a platform technology that we feel we can design drugs with the specific galectin signature to treat a specific disease. Will one drug work on dozens of diseases? Probably not. But there's only one way to find out, and that's through additional testing. We're basically building a key for a lock of every viral indication.
Mike, talk a little bit about who your competition is.
You know, our lead candidate, PLM, is based on our peer-reviewed article, and our peer-reviewed article said we have the potential to prevent or stop COVID-19. That's big. This means our competitors are big too. That means we're looking at vaccine makers, the monoclonal antibodies, or the antivirals like Paxlovid and Molnupiravir. Now, the vaccine makers got a big $5 billion boost from Operation NextGen to develop a pan-coronavirus vaccine for future variants. So our biggest competition is fighting this ideology that a vaccine is the most efficient way to stop the spread of the disease. We disagree, but that means we're disagreeing with $5 billion. That's tough. That's competition. We think it makes a whole lot more sense to treat people if they're sick and then dramatically reduce the time that they're transmissible. This is what a galectin antagonist is designed to do. Now, the real question that investors should be asking is who's left pursuing these COVID therapeutics? We just got news a couple weeks ago, Party's Bioscience was the last antiviral standing, and their mission was to knock out COVID. I mean, they've stated that. Well, they didn't, and they're sitting on a pile of cash. What are they doing? I don't know. They abandoned development of their drug. There's about a dozen other drug makers that either failed or abandoned development of their drugs. The truth is, I think we're the only one. I think the only one left is in phase 2 is Molecular Partners, and they're partnered with Novartis. But you know what? they're not even developing the drug anymore. Remember, COVID's over. So now if COVID rears its ugly head again, and we're seeing evidence of that in India big time, it seems likely that Bioxytran is going to be one of the only potential therapeutics in striking distance, because it looks likely that the variant XBB.1.16 is outsmarted Paxlovid. There's really no real options left to treat COVID and the virus right now, and it continues to evolve unchecked as we declare the pandemic is over on May 11th. Remember that. Pandemic's over, May 11th. That date's coming. Bioxytran has a less toxic antiviral that seems to reduce viral load much quicker, and the drug looks like it's going to work on these future variants. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's good news. Mike, so are these going to be over-the-counter or prescription drugs?
You know, we really can't answer that right now until we get further along in our testing. But if things work as advertised, we don't see any reason why our future pharma partners would not want this on the shelves of every single pharmacy in the country.
Well, with that said, are you partnering with any of these big pharma potential partners out there? Can you share insight with our investors?
Well, I want to say yes, we're in active discussion with a number of big pharmas, but the truth is all that's meaningless unless we have NDAs. So going forward, that's how I would measure our success. Right now, we're in this kind of getting to know you stage, and they are trying to figure out how to fit in with our highly efficacious drug pipeline. The good news is that they understand what 100% means, like the scientists, and they understand that how good these results are. So, but the thing is, pharma sometimes isn't familiar with new approaches like targeting galectins and these highly effective inhibitors, and having actually drugs without side effects. So these are all aspects of our novel approach. So it's going to take time to get their buy-in. Now we are talking with small farmers out there, and we're, you know, we like where things are going, but they're also being very directive in what they're looking for. They are looking for some sort of FDA IND. So if that were to come to pass, I could see that part heating up for us.
Great. Mike, a few questions from our audience since we have a little bit of time. Josh Cohen wants you to talk about approvals you've received and maybe some things that are coming up in the near future.
Yeah, sure. So our approvals are essentially in India. So we have the approval to proceed with Prolectin I and Prolectin M. So Prolectin I, that's for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and long COVID. And in India, what we have the approval to proceed on is a small study, and it's in healthy human volunteers, and it's basically designed as a safety trial. So we're approved for a safety trial for Prolectin I, and we're really excited about that. And then Prolectin M, which everyone is talking about, we basically got the approval to proceed with our dose optimization study. That has not started yet. There's no news to break, although I want to, but we could see news breaking, this month or very early next month. You can read between the lines there, but we're really excited to get that dose optimization study started, because then that will lead into our phase 3.
Vic Ramos says there are some players in the global galectin inhibitor, including glycomimetics, Galectin Therapeutics, G3 Pharmaceuticals, and even big ones as Pfizer and Lilly. So talk about the technology you have versus some of the competition mentioned.
Very, very good question. So Our molecule is designed to go extracellularly, not intracellularly. That's where binding happens. And we're using a carbohydrate. All these other approaches are different. So, you know, actually, Galectin Therapeutics is not different. It's very similar, because they use a carbohydrate as well. But the truth is, you know, our CEO had probably had something to do with that too. We have a small molecule over at Glyco, so that's a difference, and they target the galectin 3. So what happens there is that molecule is very small, so it's metabolized by the body very quickly. And then the other approaches that you mentioned out there with these other guys is they're using monoclonal antibodies. And they're using monoclonal antibodies to target other galectins too, like even galectin 9 I've seen out there. So we have our molecule has some potential to go after all these sort of different galectin targets, as opposed to just one. So we're multi-galectin faceted versus only one galectin faceted, and using monoclonal antibodies versus a carbohydrate drug.
And Matt Murray says, since the modern narrative seems to be that COVID's over, how does this impact potential sales of your product? We know you mentioned how you're focused on treating strokes as well. So can you talk about other uses for your galectin inhibitor?
Okay, we got to break that down into two things. So the first part is the market for COVID being over. I hopefully made it clear to most people on the last conference, we're not a COVID company. It doesn't matter. We're using COVID as a case study to get the drug approved. Now, if COVID rears its ugly head back, I think we're going to be. I think that bat phone's going to ring, so to speak, right? But for the most part, we're trying to get our drug approved. Look at the other indications, influenza. There's not going to be a problem with that. There's nothing out there. RSV. So we have other indications. Now, to get to the second part of your question with respect to BXT25 and how we're going to treat strokes, we still have a long way to go there, and there's a huge market for that. Hopefully, I just hold your breath. Your brain is holding your breath when you're having a stroke. For us to intervene early when you're having a stroke and restore the oxygen supply to the brain, that's huge. And that's what we believe is probably going to be one of the most common uses for BXT25. We're really excited to get started with that.
And last question from Gary Z. When are you looking to uplist?
Uplist. A lot of things have to happen for uplist, but are we ready? Yes. What do we need? We need funding. So we need money. So uplisting is contingent upon funding. I think once we get the bridge money that we need, we're going to be in a position to finish out our clinical trials. And then once our clinical trials are done in India, there's no reason why we won't get a licensing deal and start to get revenue coming in. So we're really excited about that. And we think that's probably the time frame of that's around the time frame where we could see an uplisting. So,
wonderful.
It depends.
Well, keep working hard on this, Mike. It's always a pleasure speaking with you and learning so much about this very important sector that you're in. Do you have any closing remarks for our viewers?
Everyone out there, we need your support. Take a look at what the scientists are saying. They're saying, wow. The question is, why aren't you saying, wow? Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mike. We'll see you again in the future. And everyone, stay with us. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back at 2:55 Eastern with important updates from Odyssey Semiconductor and Single Point. We'll be back in a little bit.